Hi, I'm Stephen with AlbertaUrbanGarden.ca. Tomatoes are one of the most popular garden plants. In the past two videos in this year's tomato series, I have spoken about getting them started in the house, planting them in the garden, and how to fertilize them using free and local resources. Today I thought I would go through how I prune my tomatoes and my disease prevention strategy. Now, tomato plants, whether unpruned or pruned, should produce per plant roughly the same amount of produce. The only real difference is if you leave your plant unpruned, you will need a lot more space to spread out above ground. In my garden, this takes up valuable real estate. By pruning, you are able to reduce the size of the plant above ground, allowing you to plant more tomatoes in the same area, harvest larger crops, clone new tomato plants, and prevent diseases such as blight. Now, before you go out and start pruning your tomatoes, it's important to know which varieties of tomatoes you have. Determinant tomatoes will grow to a certain size, produce all of its fruit at once, and then usually the plant dies. Pruning determinant tomatoes can actually be more harmful than good. Indeterminate tomatoes will continue to grow as long as conditions are favorable, and this can be enhanced by a little bit of pruning. You can usually find out if you have a determinant or indeterminate by looking at the back of the seed package, plant tag, or quick Google search. As my indeterminate tomatoes will continue to grow throughout the season, I've supported them using this electrical conduit trellis. A link to the video where I show you how to build this and any other related videos can be found in the description below. I simply weave the vine between the tomato netting, and when I can't, I use reusable Velcro tape. This should be more than enough support even when the plant is fully loaded with fruit. Now that we know the types of tomatoes that need pruning, let's take a look at what and where to prune. Essentially, it is recommended to prune suckers. Suckers can be found at the junction of the branch below flower clusters. If left alone, suckers will develop and produce fruit and suckers of their own, adding another full plant to the parent plant. When pruning, simply use sharp clippers and get as close to the junction as possible. It is easier to keep on top of pruning your tomatoes if you spend a few minutes each week dedicated to this. Removing the suckers while they are small leaves a smaller wound and stresses the plant less. So once you've pruned the suckers, other than throwing them in the compost, what else can you do with them? If they are large enough, you can plant them in soil, removing any of the leaves that will be under the surface, and they should root if kept moist, producing a clone of the parent plant. I don't usually plant suckers in my garden as my growing season is just a little too short for the plant to come to maturity and produce. I have done it on occasion when I was lucky enough to find a tomato plant that had suckered and I could get it to root in the house before bringing it outside. So what are some of the other benefits of pruning your tomatoes? Well, pruning your tomatoes will help prevent disease. Diseases like blight commonly infect tomato plants. The term blight refers to the symptom, not necessarily the cause. However, in tomatoes, this is usually a fungal infection. The optimal conditions for a blight fungal infection to take hold is in a humid, shady location. By removing the additional plant biomass, you're able to increase the sun's penetration and the airflow, helping to prevent blight's establishment on your plant. Other ways you can reduce the chances of infection is if you prune the lower leaves up to 30 centimeters or 12 inches from the ground and mulch the soil around the plant. Blight spores often come from the soil below the plant. When you prune the lower leaves, you help reduce the spore's ability to splash onto the plant when it rains or you water your garden with a hose. I also remove any of the leaves that may look infected. This helps prevent the spread of any infections to the healthy parts of the plant. Now that we've talked about pruning your tomato plants and disease prevention, let's talk about topping your tomato plant. By topping your tomato plant, you prevent further growth, allowing it to focus on the tomatoes that it currently has. I tend to do this when it gets to a comfortable height for me to manage, which is usually the top of this trellis. If you're in a southern growing zone, you can continue to train your tomatoes as they'll continue to grow as long as conditions are favorable. Pruning your indeterminate tomatoes allows you to grow more and prevent disease, but that's not all. According to Oregon State University, the pruning of suckers also speeds up the ripening of fruit. In most northern growing zones, the faster things ripen, the better. Even if you're in southern areas, getting that first ripe tomato is often quite the reward. Pruning tomatoes is an effective strategy to grow more food in a small space. As I mentioned earlier, each tomato plant, regardless if it's pruned or unpruned, should produce roughly the same amount of produce. That said, a pruned plant can be planted in 30 centimeters square, or 1 square foot, whereas an unpruned should really be 2 to 3 times the distance. By taking advantage of this method, you can plant more tomatoes in the same square area, increasing the overall production per square foot of garden. In summary, although this method is optional, in a bio-intensive small space garden like mine, I find it's well worth the investment of time and effort to prevent disease, get a larger crop per square foot, and to have a ripe crop just a little bit earlier in the season. On the next tomato series video, I'm going to investigate blossom end rot and the cures that people have suggested to see if they are supported by science or not. If you like this video, please make sure to subscribe. Thank you very much for spending time with me today. I appreciate it very much, and I hope you have a fantastic day.